Sans plus tarder, on va introduire le troisième thème de ce colloque qui porte sur les enjeux technologiques de la gestion des données de recherche. Avec un peu de chance, on pourra aujourd'hui répondre aux questions posées par différents intervenants hier. La question des technologies est évidemment centrale à toute la gestion des données de recherche. On gère que rarement l'entièreté de nos données dans un classeur ces jours-ci. Et les outils à notre disposition influencent grandement les choix qu'on fera en matière de stockage et de partage. C'est d'ailleurs les possibilités du numérique qui font qu'on se retrouve aujourd'hui dans un colloque virtuel à discuter des différentes façons dont on peut optimiser le partage de données. Les questions se posaient très différemment à l'époque. À l'époque où je n'étais pas là, donc j'imagine qu'elles se posaient différemment, je me projette. Afin de respecter des règles éthiques, les chercheurs ont avec raison beaucoup de prudence dans la gestion de leurs données. Cette prudence est souvent nécessaire. D'autres fois, il serait peut-être possible de partager certains types de données de façon à pouvoir alimenter de futures recherches. Je vous invite dès maintenant à réfléchir aux limites éthiques, juridiques qui vont se poser à vous quand vous écouterez les intervenants de ce matin pour qu'on puisse faire converser les questions du matin avec peut-être les réponses que pourront fournir les intervenants de cet après-midi. Donc, on pourra discuter des possibilités technologiques aujourd'hui et de la façon dont, ce matin, et la façon dont on peut les utiliser dans le respect des principes éthiques et juridiques au Québec et au Canada. Technologie permet d'emprunter aussi de nouveaux sentiers en recherche, de faciliter les travaux, de créer de nouveaux savoirs. C'est ce dont nous parlerons, par exemple, M. Palomino et M. Goyer en fin de matinée. Pour information, on prendra une pause vers 11 h ce matin, juste avant la présentation de Mme Ménard. Afin d'amorcer toute cette réflexion de notre troisième thème, on débute avec la présentation d'un outil qui vise justement à penser à des solutions à toute la question des technologies, des limites éthiques, juridiques, de la diffusion de données et autres. On parle ici du plan de gestion de données dont on a parlé hier, qui est régulièrement mis de l'avant par les organismes nationaux et internationaux qui font la promotion des bonnes pratiques. Je suis très heureux que M. James Doiron ait accepté d'être avec nous ce matin pour en discuter. Coordonnateur des services de gestion de données de recherche de la Bibliothèque de l'Université de l'Alberta, M. Doiron a une formation en psychologie et criminologie. Il accompagne les chercheurs dans la gestion des données depuis de nombreuses années et siège activement dans différents groupes consultatifs en lien avec la donnée à Statistique Canada, au Consortium interuniversitaire pour la recherche politique et sociale, à l'Association canadienne des bibliothèques de recherche et à Portage. Sa présentation portera d'une part sur les avantages de rédiger un plan de gestion de données pour un projet de recherche et d'autre part sur les outils et ressources qui peuvent aider un chercheur dans ce travail. Notez que bien que la présentation de M. Doiron soit en anglais, vous pourrez poser vos questions en français ou en anglais. Notre équipe se chargera de la traduction à ce moment. So, thank you very much, Mr. Doiron, for being with us today. If you are ready, I now invite you to begin your presentation. Thanks.
Bonjour, merci de m'avoir invité. Thank you very much for inviting me this morning. And I think as it's been outlined, and my apologies, my French speaking is not at a level where I think you would want to try to hear me present in French, but I will speak in English, but I have developed my slides with many of them in French, which I hope is not confusing during the presentation, but I did want for the slides to be useful to you afterwards. And as well, I do try to load them up with links to resources and such that can hopefully be helpful for you. So without further ado, I'll just try to share my screen here. Can you see that okay? Okay, so jump right in. So there's been a lot happening in the research data management landscape the past 12 months, but even the last few years, including with data management planning. So given that there's limited time, I'm just going to jump right into the content here. So jumping into what is a data management plan, and essentially it's a formal document that really helps researchers to articulate the different tools and the types of strategies that they might try to implement and leverage to really hopefully effectively manage data during not just the active phases of research, but beyond after the completion of the research projects. So that will go into the potential for data deposition, appropriate access, and potentially reuse of research data. And so it's really just as the planning piece would allude to, it's about trying to address issues as early as possible prior to even beginning the research project. This is just a quick high-level slide of the standard components of a data management plan. So we recognize that different types of disciplines and methodologies may have different things that they need to attend to, more or less. But this is just a good, I think, general idea of the types of categories you'll see within a data management plan. So things around data collection and documentation and metadata, all the way down to preservation, so forth. And then within any of these categories, you will see a number of different questions. And again, those questions can differ depending upon the type of research that one is embarking upon, as will perhaps the guidance that comes along with those. I think that most everyone's probably already familiar with the tri-agency and the forthcoming policy that we know is around the corner. But at this point, I thought I would at least just point to the draft data management policy that they released in the spring of 2018, which really focuses in on 3 pillars, and that's around institutional strategy. So essentially moving forward, once the final policy is released and after a period of time, institutions across Canada that are looking to administer tri-agency funds will have to have an institutional strategy developed and implemented and public facing, as well as that we'll start to see requirement for data management plans, and that will essentially come in at the funding call level. So it's not that they're going to release the policy and then suddenly everything does a 180 degree and suddenly everything changes. They're going to incrementally start to implement these requirements. And then the third pillar of that would be around data deposition. We know that COVID-19 has really affected our lives, not just professionally, but personally. But in terms of this policy, it has delayed the release, although we are expecting a release this spring. So stay tuned. I'm sure that's coming just around the corner. So why are data management plans important? They're important for lots of reasons, but I guess the 4 for me that really stick out is, first, again, as I've mentioned before, they help for you to set out consistent strategies prior to starting research. So it's never the case that it's too late to start a data management plan, but ideally, if you can start it at the earliest stages, even if it's a grant-funded model at the grant writing stage, that would be optimal. And it will help for you to identify both strengths and weaknesses in practices. I've been involved in research for 20 plus years, and I certainly can go back to times when I would do things differently. And so data management planning can help to identify things, to help document them, and then to move forward. And if you found things that work for you really well and are supportive of the type of research you're doing, then so forth, you can also continue on with those. It'll really help for the data to be prepared for, not just for yourself to use in your immediate research projects, but for future reuse and for that preservation and curation and appropriate sharing and potential reuse. And really, again, as the planning piece alludes to, planning in itself typically will help you make things more efficient, and efficiencies can reduce the overall cost of your research as well. So when should you start creating a data management plan? Well, again, I don't think it's ever too late, to be honest, but ideally, if you can begin as early as possible in the research project and start to think about the things that you might have to. And I always say that you may not have all of the answers to the questions at the front of the research projects. I've been involved in very large multi-year, multi-institutional projects. I'm currently on a SSHRC partnership grant that is exactly that. And we don't have all the answers at the start. Think of a data management plan as a living document that you can come back to, and maybe you can bookmark some of those questions. And then that's where you can connect with expertise around any given area. And it's okay not to have all of the answers, but you can't solve problems that you don't know about or that you can't speak about. So if the DMP is at least asking the questions that somebody may not have otherwise, I think that's doing a huge support for the research. So just some guidance around, and this is very general guidance, not by any specific section for DMPs. So any DMP should always first start out with a description of the project, talking about the areas of its focus and also its objectives, and just give that kind of high-level summary so that anyone can come in and just quickly get up to speed and understand what the project's about. You also want to try to stay away from disciplinary specific jargon, and we have that in all sorts of different disciplines, and sometimes it's unavoidable. But I guess it's just try to use lay terms as best possible so that, again, that anyone can come in and potentially understand your data management plan. You also want to try to define acronyms. We in research love our acronyms. I use them all the time, and I think we take it for granted sometimes that not everybody knows what those mean. So again, assume that somebody's going to read your data management plan that knows nothing about your research. And so if you can define acronyms, at least one in any, I use a once in any section kind of a rule, that'll be a great help to those folks. As well, don't leave sections blank. If something's not applicable, I think that's okay to state that. Or if it's something, again, where you just don't know the answers yet, it's okay to bookmark that and just state that as well. But a blank section, somebody reading that doesn't know if it's applicable, not applicable, if you just don't know yet. So just kind of entering in that information would be really helpful, especially as things potentially move forth where DMPs may be reviewed in maybe grant funding processes and such, whether that's internal or further downstream external to the funders. And also, don't just state, as best able, don't just state that you're doing something, state why you're doing something. So if you've chosen, for instance, to use a specific data collection platform or to store your data in a certain place, just explain the justification why. It doesn't need to be, you know, a novel. It doesn't need to be longer than it needs to be, but just something to give, again, the reader the idea. And again, remembering that your data management plan is a living document, something you can always come back to and revise and document as you go. I want to point you to some resources that we released through Portage. And so I've got links to both the English and French version of these DMP guidance resources. And so those first, that previous slide where I just talked about the general things that one might want to attend to are reflected within these, but then also they go in by each of those sections from that earlier slide, the data collection and metadata documentation preservation, and provides, again, some really good, hopefully what I think is really good high level guidance. And just by virtue of time, I can't go into each of those, but I really hope this is very helpful for you. This is just a little zoom in on what that looks like. We also recently released a number of DMP exemplars, and that was one of the biggest asks that we had. So researchers would say, okay, I have to create a data management plan, and do you have an example? Do you have a good example of what that looks like? And the first thing we needed to do was to define some criteria around what makes a good DMP, and that was really early on. That speaks to that previous slide around guidance. So that's kind of a starting point, at least. But also, I recognize that different disciplines, again, have different needs, and there will be different types of things that you may zone in on more or less depending upon the research at hand. So what we've done is we've worked with community members. So there's actually been a call out, and folks from Portage and institutions across Canada have worked with researchers and communities to develop and release these exemplar DMPs. They're available bilingually, but I've just linked up each of these with their French version. So we've got a few that go across the social sciences, including one that does secondary data. There's a mixed method, so that would be qualitative research and surveys. I actually authored that one based on fictitious experiences that I've had. So I tried to really make it very, hopefully very exemplar in that sense. We also have a couple that go across the natural sciences and social sciences. So I hope that those are helpful for you, and there will be more coming soon. We're going to be out of the data management planning expert group that operates under Portage, putting another call out here probably in the next few months to create some more. This is, again, just a bit of a zoom in snapshot on what those look like. We don't just throw out, here's the DMP and leave it at that. This little yellow box here, throughout all of those, we have call outs essentially. So it's just kind of that side note that gives a little bit of further explanation as to why something's important, or to take note of, this is why we did something here, or a suggestion and such. So again, we hope that those are helpful for you too. And my thanks to everyone that was involved in developing these. These are a really great addition to our data management plan support. This is a snapshot of the Portage network website. I think, again, most are probably familiar with Portage. That's our national research data management organization, currently operating under the Canadian Association Research Libraries, but soon to be moving over officially under the new Endrio landscape. I've just given you the screenshot. At the top, there's a link to the Portage website. And again, just highlighting that up at the top, there is a drop down for all the various different networks of expertise. I'm just pointing out the data management planning expert group, which also our previous speaker, Jonathan Dory, is a member of. And also there's a link directly here to the Dmp Assistant Platform. This is just a little idea of what the Portage DMP expert group focuses in on, kind of our objectives, and there's lots and lots of work happening right now. So we're looking forward to some more work coming forward. And if you've been on various listservs as of late, you've been seeing lots of announcements about things that have been happening in releases. Probably the biggest of those right now has been the release of the Dmp Assistant 2.0 version, which just happened earlier this week. So my apologies to the organizers here. I only got to my slides yesterday. It was because I was waiting so that I could give these screenshots. You are the first group that I'm presenting to, showing the new Dmp Assistant platform. I can't do a deep dive into it given the time, but I did at least want to give you the link to it and point out a few things. So it is available bilingually, the platform. We have had professional translation services work on that. There's still some work to do, certainly on some of the new templates that'll be coming in, but that's the nature of any technical platform. Nothing is ever released and perfect off the bat, so we'll be certainly working and improving it as we move forward. And this is a platform that anyone can use, and it's free to use. You don't have to be located at an academic institution. I've got folks that I work with across the nonprofit sector or even in private sector and so forth. So again, anyone can go and create an account and use it. This is just a very high level bird's eye view of some of the key features for the Dmp Assistant. So again, it promotes cross institutional collaboration, again, because anyone can use it. It's freely accessible, fully bilingual, and it is endorsed by the tri-agencies. It's actually named within that previous draft policy, and my understanding is that it's similarly so in the final policy that's soon to be released. It doesn't just, as I mentioned before, ask questions. It provides examples and guidance to really help folks that are developing their DMPs, and you can have as many DMPs as you'd like. I have yet to find that ceiling, so feel free to find it. But just as you are potentially involved in many different types of research projects at the same time, so too can you have many different types of DMPs happening simultaneously. And you can really just very easily, quickly open up its access to others. You can have that as a read-only or an owner or editor access. So there's different levels of access, and it's really very simple to just give and take away that access if needed. And you can export your DMP into various formats, PDF and text files and Word, which is actually really handy for if you're wanting to use it for reports or for future funding applications, or if you go through a data management plan, you may recognize many of the categories and questions as being those that you might fill out when you're doing your ethics application. So if you can easily export things out, maybe there's a bit of word smithing to do and tweaking, that's okay, but at least it helps you, makes it a bit easier. And again, it's something that you should always keep in mind, that it's modifiable as you move along. I've been involved in research where, in the third year of a project, we have made decisions to go a different way. In one particular one, a CFI I was on, we had new technology emerge that wasn't available previously. So we were able to go back and reflect that within our data management plan, and that's absolutely fine. When you sign in, you can go and you can immediately either access existing data management plans. I have a number of them in this particular account that I have, or you can go ahead and create a new data management plan. So again, it's very easy to just click on either of those. Any data management plan will have a level of metadata and documentation regarding the data management plan. So just the titles of the projects, and maybe you might have a grant number associated with it, a bit of a brief abstract summary of the project, for instance, ORCID ID or a persistent identifier to the person. Maybe the PI is not the person that is to be contacted for the data. There might be a data manager. So these are all things that you can add in. And then again, these are all editable as you move on. If things change, you can reflect that within this section of your data management plan. Once you get into the actual questions, then you've got those categories. You'll recognize these from that early slide where I gave the bird's eye view of categories. You can very quickly just go in and you could click on any of these plus signs. It would open up and then you would have the questions. In this case, I could see that there's 6 questions and I've answered all 6 questions at this stage, but again, I might want to go in and edit those. I'll just note as well, this is the Portage template. So this is a very vanilla template. It's not based on any specific discipline. So it's got these basic categories as well as some very basic and general, although still very helpful questions and guidance. This is what it looks like when you zoom in on any given question. Again, I can come in and at this point, I don't think it's really an exciting platform tool, but I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just a really easy to use and pragmatically functional tool. So I can come in and anyone who's used Google Docs or Word can recognize this type of toolbar here. Anyone, if they're like me, I like to use tables and colors and links and all sorts of things as I've done here. And this is where you can add in your text. You may not have all of the answers. That's okay. You can document that there as well. And over here on the side, you can see where there is guidance here. This is from my template at the University of Alberta. So we've customized some of this guidance and all institutions have the opportunity to do that. And then I could also put in some additional comments on the side if I had a collaborator and I just wanted to keep that between us. Here is just a screenshot of how I can quickly share my data management plan. So again, you can just go in and add the person's email, and then you can choose the type of access that you'd like for them to have. If they have a data management planning account, then it will already, Dmp Assistant account, I should say, they will automatically be added in with that level of access that you've assigned. If they do not have an account, then they'll receive a notification in their email, and that's their notification to go and create their account within the Dmp Assistant. This just shows a quick drop down of how you can export them out in our new platform. So there's a few different formats that you can export out into, and you can also even tailor it in terms of the type of font and size and all sorts of things for aesthetics or for functional. Again, maybe if you're inserting text directly into a grant application that has rules about these types of things, then it supports that. And moving forward, this is just a very high level bird's eye view. It makes it look painless if we look at it fast enough because it's a lot of work going into it. But first and foremost, as I mentioned, the Dmp Assistant 2.0 was released earlier this week. It was a really long haul. It was a lot of work. Because the Dmp Assistant 2.0 is hosted at the University of Alberta Library, I've been very involved in that. And of course, is by virtue of my role as co-chair of the Data Management Planning Expert Group, but it has taken a huge collaborative effort on behalf of not just the folks at the host institution, but the folks at Portage, Jeff Moon, Robin Nicholson, the DMP coordinator, Lee Wilson, the service manager for Portage, and many others, as well as the community members. We've gotten great feedback. We had a few calls for beta testing and feedback, including from those from the Francophone communities and institutions, and that is really valuable. It's what really helps to make a platform like this improved and hopefully as good as it can be, and that will continue. And so we do have a couple of bilingual webinars coming up around Dmp Assistant 2.0. There will be one on the 23rd of March that I will deliver that will be on more about DMPs themselves and go into deeper dives on some of the things that I started to talk about on this presentation. So communications will come out in announcements soon. And then Robin Nicholson, the DMP coordinator, will do one specifically on Dmp Assistant 2.0, showcasing its new features. There are a lot of new features that come under the hood that really support administrators at institutions. And I couldn't go into those again, just given time, but she's going to focus in on that. And hopefully that's really helpful for you. Just wanted to highlight that we will have a number of new discipline and methodology specific templates coming into Dmp Assistant 2.0. We already have released yesterday 5 new templates. So by this, I mean, if you recall, I showed you the categories in the Portage template. But what has happened is there was a call out to work with community members coming from different disciplines and that have expertise with various methodologies. And they have created templates and guidance specifically tailored for those types of disciplines and methodologies. So 5 of them have been bilingually released currently within the DMP Assistant 2.0. And there's another 8 in the hopper right now that are just going through a final professional translation. And then those will come into the DMP Assistant. And I anticipate there'll be more down the road as we move forward. And as well, we will then develop more exemplar DMPs based on all of these new templates. So there's lots happening, as well as the bigger picture, some features around support for things like API and machine actionable DMPs. I really also want to highlight that recently we were successful in forming and launching our new DMP Assistant Steering Committee. The first meeting happened in January. This is a really important addition to the complete service model for the DMP Assistant. It consists of a wide range of stakeholders. So we do have Portage and folks from the host institution at U Alberta, but also researcher representation, tri-agencies, and recently, earlier in this calendar year, we confirmed the participation of the First Nations Information Governance Center as well. So we're really happy to have this because the purpose of a steering committee like this is to help guide the ongoing development and the sustainability of the DMP Assistant. And it looks like I missed my final point there. I'll add that in after, but essentially about really helping to prioritize the work. There's seemingly infinite number of things to do and finite resources to do them. So helping to get holistic perspectives on what is important, what might be most important, what things should be happening first. Sometimes that's a matter of priority. Sometimes it makes more sense from a technical standpoint to do some things first. So we're really happy to have that in place. And then just to wrap it up, the DMP expert group under Portage, we had a call out recently for new members, which has been great. And we just earlier this week reviewed a high number of applications, more than I anticipated actually, which was really great to see. And unfortunately, we can't have everybody come on board, and there were some tough decisions to make, but folks will be getting notified soon. And there will be at least a couple, it looks like to me, of Francophone members coming on board, which is really welcome as well to us to complement the group and really the national perspective of it. And there's 2 new working groups that we are about to launch. I was just reviewing the draft terms of reference yesterday and firming them up. So the first one is to focus in on a DMP Assistant 2.0 tutorial video development and delivery. So that will be a brief, lean, but hopefully very helpful video that showcases 2.0 DMP Assistant, how to use it, the types of features that I showcased here in this presentation, but also a bit around some of the ones under the hood in terms of administrative features. So that will hopefully get underway. I would like to hopefully see it later this month start. And we want to try to get that out sooner than later so that we can have that support piece there for the DMP Assistant 2.0. And then the next one would be around development of a 2.0 customization guide. So that would be the one that really does focus on the administrative features. And so that would be the go-to guide for administrators to access and really at any time that they want to brush up, whether it's a refresher or learning from scratch, how to operate the DMP Assistant from an administrator perspective, how to customize it. So for instance, when you have the guidance for any given question, you may have specific links and guidance that you want to add for users at your institution. There may be some things that are available to them there that aren't for everyone else. So that's where you have the opportunity to add in that guidance. Also, you may want to customize in terms of logos and as well. You may want to generate different reports and metrics around the usage of DMP Assistant at your institution. I think that would be fair to say everyone would be interested in that. So these are the types of things that the customization guide will look to assist with. So that is a very high level bird's eye view of things happening with DMPs and DMP Assistant. I'm sure there's lots more, but I hope that gives you some good foundational information, an idea of existing resources and some soon to come. And I'm happy to stop there and to field any questions should there be any.